Everyone, please take your seats. Thank you very much for coming. Welcome. My name is Karen Tucker. I'm the CEO of the Churchill Club. I'm very happy to welcome everybody here tonight. And the name of our program is Leaders of Tomorrow. And let's say hello to our panel. We have Catherine Gao. We have, and I'm not going to say it in the order that you're seating here, but it's alphabetical, Ben Gulak, Jason Halpern, Dániel Rátai, and Josh Weinstein of GoodCrush, and Dániel is of Leonard 3DO, Jason of PowerFlower Solar, Ben of BPG Motors, and Catherine of Givology. You're going to learn a lot about these organizations shortly. I want to thank and welcome the panel. Thank you for being here. Great. And we're also honored to welcome Pattie Sellers, editor-at-large of Fortune magazine. Thank you, Pattie. And then finally, Ankur, Jain, founder of the Kairos Society, is also going to step up here and say a few words about the society. These talented, innovative, and very determined people here at the front of the room were actually convened through the Kairos Society, which is a student-led and operated international non-profit organization that brings college students together to tackle global issues through entrepreneurship. And each of them is the proud recipient of an Intellius Entrepreneurship Award, which recognizes exceptional student-founded companies in social impact, technology, marketing, and sustainability. And I'm sure everybody is going to learn a lot from the discussion tonight. Before we start, I have a couple of other brief announcements. First, there is a company tonight that championed and made possible this program, and that company is Intellius. And we really appreciate them making it possible. Naveen Jain is CEO of Intellius. And Naveen, may I ask you please just to stand up or give a wave? Clearly one of his greatest passions is entrepreneurship, and he is clearly very committed to mentoring young entrepreneurs. We really appreciate you making this possible. And I also would like to give a nod to Susan Kohler, who very much was instrumental in all of the pieces and bringing them together for this program. Finally, I need to acknowledge Microsoft, who has a wonderful facility. They've opened their doors to us tonight, and we really appreciate that. So we have some new people in the audience tonight, and I want to give you a little bit of background on the Churchill Club. It's a nonprofit business and technology forum, the largest in the Bay Area and in many other places as well. We have 7,000 members. We do about 38 to 40 programs every year, and we're just about to turn 25 years old. What we focus on from a content perspective is what's new, what's next, what's not known. And that's our way of trying to really differentiate the conversations that we have here from other kinds of discussions and other places that people can obtain information. We very much think of it as a conversation and not a platform. So people don't come to the Churchill Club and do a sales pitch or hype or anything like that. It's meant to be a conversation about important issues of the day. And we are a member operated or driven organization. We do have everything from individual memberships to corporate memberships to, in fact, free student memberships. And so those students of you in the audience that are interested in that, be sure to inquire with staff that's here. Visit the website. There's more information there as well. I think this is an opportunity not only to bring important topics and conversations to the forefront, but also you in the audience can network with one another and have great conversations that are in addition to what you're hearing on the stage. So, with that, I wanted to tell you about 2 upcoming programs that we've announced, but it's important to watch our website because new ones crop up very often. But the first is a breakfast program on June 23rd, and it is called Inside the Facebook Effect. There's a new book coming out by David Kirkpatrick, formerly of Fortune, and it's a sanctioned book, so he worked very closely with Facebook, and we're not going to ask him to talk about the book, but rather, what did he learn when he was researching the book? So have kind of a little bit of a different twist on it, because there are a lot of issues there that I think people would love the inside story. And that's going to be June 23rd. The second one is July 23rd. It's also a breakfast program, and it's a life sciences outlook breakfast that focuses on healthcare reform because of the big changes that have taken place and what does that mean to the life sciences industry. Finally, one last announcement. If you are tweeting tonight, please use hashtag or # Churchill Club so that everybody can follow the same conversation. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Ankur, Jain to come up and talk about the Kairos Society. But first, I would like to introduce our moderator, Pattie Sellers, and the editor at large of Fortune. And Fortune, I'm sure everybody in this room is well familiar with the publication. It's one of the most influential business and global business magazines in the world. And Pattie says she thinks she has the best job in the world. She gets to write about titans and entrepreneurs, and she has a license to be, her words, a voyeur into the world of the most successful people like Oprah and Martha Stewart and Ted Turner, and she gets to talk with them about the ups and downs. And she's presently at a point in her life where she's looking to spread her own wings, and she's located in New York, but she is dreaming of living in California at some point. In fact, in the last month, I think you were in LA twice to work on and pitch a TV show about entrepreneurs. And so you can see that she's very interested also in the whole realm of entrepreneurship. So before you start out, Pattie, let's hear a little bit about the Kairos Society. So let me invite Ankur to come up here and talk about that. Thank you.
Wow, well, thank you, Karen, and everyone for hosting us here at the Churchill Club. We're incredibly excited because it's only, 5-6 weeks since we were all together in New York City. Pattie, thanks for being here again. Pattie was actually kind enough to be in New York with us at the Global Summit and back with us in California, so very excited. She's going to be the face of entrepreneurship in just a few months, so we're all very, very thrilled. How many of you guys are familiar with what we do with the Kairos Society? Great, so you guys are not going to be too bored when I explain it. Right now, we're in a very interesting time in the world. A lot of people are concerned about where things are moving with technology, with the economy, with international relations. And what we believe with the Kairos Society is that there's a new generation of leaders cropping up at all these top universities in the United States, in India, in China, in Hungary, around different parts of Europe. And these students are looking to solve these problems that we all see today as big issues through entrepreneurship. These students are finding that the business sector, the private sector, is offering new and innovative ways that we can tackle everything from alternative energy, like you saw Jason's work, or transportation, like you see in Ben, or even funding student entrepreneurs, as you see with Givology. And what we believe in is that if we can identify these top kids from these top universities and bring them together, that as a collective mind, they can solve problems much more efficiently and effectively than they can as individuals. And we've seen that. In just the past 2 years since our founding, we've brought together over 1,200 of these bright students who have now gone through and started companies that have won everything from Business Week's Young Entrepreneur of the Year to Inc. Magazine's Newpreneur of the Year. And every year we host a global summit. Just 6 weeks ago in New York City, we had 600 students from around the world join us and 150 of the top CEOs from, obviously Pattie joined us, CEO of Boeing, DuPont, just a variety of companies, New York Stock Exchange, to sit down and say, what are the issues that matter? And how can you, as future leaders, step up to solve these problems? We had 100 companies showcase on the trading floor, and these students here represent the best of those companies. And I'm telling you, it is incredibly impressive to see what these guys are all doing while still somehow going to school. Maybe Ben is, every now and then going to school. But I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. And so there's really two principles that I think you guys can all appreciate and also help these students with, and not just these, but these students around the world. And those two principles are, one, can we solve global problems through entrepreneurship? Can we take the issues that matter and rather than leaving it to politicians and policy and just a traditional nonprofit route, find a sustainable, profitable model that works? And the second thing is, you see with international relations some serious tensions coming up. And I think we all would agree that in the next 10 years, the world is going to look a very different place. China's going to be a superpower, India, Russia, Brazil. But the politicians are creating a big mess out of it. And we believe that these students coming in from around the world can solve these international issues, again, through entrepreneurship. And so our second platform is diplomacy through entrepreneurship. Can we identify the future business leaders and have them work together from now so that 5-10 years from now, when each of these kids are running their respective countries, they keep close together, and the friendship actually holds past all the politics. And someone will tell me capitalism and capital is not patriotic. It goes across countries, and that's what we believe in here. We're hoping that these students, whether they're from Hungary or New York or anywhere in the world, that they're going to work together for the next 5-10 years. And so I hope you guys can encourage that, support that, and as leaders of the community and as students yourself, take that to heart as we look at what these students are doing. So thanks again, guys. Thank you, Pattie. Thank you, Karen. And, yes. So we have, obviously, Pattie from Fortune. And Catherine, joining us from the University of Pennsylvania, and she's one of the co-founders of Givology. And Givology is a micro-lending platform to student entrepreneurs, which she'll tell you about. We have Ben Gulak joining us from MIT, who has founded a variety of technologies, including the Uno Cycle and the DTV Shredder. There's Josh Weinstein joining us from Princeton, who put together a company called GoodCrush, which is a great little dating service if any of you guys are interested. We have Dániel Rátai joining us from Hungary, actually. And Dániel's put together some of the most phenomenal 3D modeling technology, which you may have had a chance to play with over in the corner there. And then Jason Halpern, also from the University of Pennsylvania, who has developed both a solar panel device, he'll describe better than I can, and also a mechanical joint, essentially a ball and socket for robots, which is very exciting. So without further ado, Pattie.
Thank you. I think I'm equipped. Good. Thanks, Ankur. Thank you. I love talking to students. So thank you for being here, and this is the best. And I love talking with adults, too. So thank you for being here. I just want to say a few words. So I've been at Fortune for 26 years, and I am looking to spread my wings. And honestly, one of the areas that fascinates me most right now, and an area that I want to learn more about and get into career-wise, is this entrepreneurial world. And I think with the world changing so fast and so unpredictably as it is today, one of the, I remember Jeff Immelt at GE saying to me, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that one of the most important things that you need to do as a CEO is see around corners. Well, you can't see around corners anymore. And the real, I think, most important characteristic of leadership, one of them is flexibility and agility and adaptability today. And, so I've come to know some entrepreneurs very well. I mean, I have a history of writing about them. I mean, I did a couple of Ted Turner cover stories over the years. I've done cover stories about Oprah and Martha Stewart and I've always, entrepreneurs just operate from the gut, and they're really interesting journalistically. But, talk about people who have to be adaptable and who, don't plan out the way Fortune 500 companies do. And this is long story short, my point is that I think more than ever, Fortune 500 companies have to think like entrepreneurs. So I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so fascinated and believe that people who are used to covering business and are in big business really have a lot to learn from you guys. So kudos to you. One of the things that I'm always curious about with anyone who is successful is where they came from. And I would actually like to start out by asking each of you what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old. What did you want to grow up to be?
So my name is Catherine. I'm going to be a senior at the University of Pennsylvania next year. So I think this is a little bit hard to remember. When I was 10, I think I somehow heard about, some top schools, some top business schools, and I actually wanted to be a banker when I was 10 years old, I think. But that's since changed since I've come to business school and realized there's a lot more out there than just banking and numbers. But I think at 10, that's kind of what I was looking at.
It's unusual. A
Very
banker
unusual.
at 10 years old.
I don't even think I understood what that meant, but it sounded cool. So.
Okay, great. That's great. Ben?
Hi everyone. I'm Ben Gulak, and I'm going to be a sophomore at MIT in the fall. And when I was 10, I actually wanted to be an architect. I loved art. I ended up taking art all the way through high school. If I hadn't gone into engineering, I was going to go apply to art college. So
I'm sure it helps you today.
it actually helped me out a lot, because when it came to doing the Uno, I designed and did all the fairing design myself. And the artistic side has always been very important in all the projects I've done.
Mm-hmm. Terrific.
Sorry. Could
And there
could
happen
anyone
to
hear
be,
that?
I think there are two Fortune 500 CEOs who are kind of like, I mean, not designers or artists by trade, but I've talked to Mark Parker at Nike about this, and he's a designer by background, and he talks about Steve Jobs as the only other Fortune 500 CEO who's sort of his ilk.
I mean, we're such a visual society that you really have to mesh the industrial design side with the technology in order to create things that people will actually want, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Josh?
Can everyone hear me? Hello? Sweet. So I wanted to be one of two things, either get involved in politics and be a politician or the goalie for the New York Rangers.
Hi, I'm Dániel Rátai, and when I was 10-year-old, I wanted to be or an inventor or a sculptor. So right now, I have a tool which I invented and can make sculptures. So it's very funny. But actually, as I remember when I was 10-year-old, I was working on perpetuum mobile, or did I say it right? And but of course, I didn't succeed. However, I even had the patent for that, so I tried to apply a patent for the perpetuum mobile, but after a while I figured out that, oh gosh, it's not going to work. So, but I have a couple of constructions for that.
That's amazing. Right.
No,
right.
actually, I had one which actually could work, but this used solar power. So, but I figured out later that it uses solar. No,
Got a great team right here.
Yeah, Mr. Solar.
My name is Jason Halpern, and I don't think I really knew what I wanted to do at 10. I'm going to say it was probably somewhere between like an astronaut and a superhero. And I've since grown out of the astronaut thing, so it's all good.
I don't want to make this whole interview. I'll line up here, and we need to make it interactive. And also, I'm going to open it up to the audience really early. So think of questions, and we need this to be a conversation. But I don't want to. Let's not go down the line. But I'm curious. Is there anything particularly unusual about any of your childhoods or growing up, or your family structure? Like if one of you told me, I know you're an only child, but I'm one of 10. I'm oldest of 10 kids, or whatever. Anything interesting there? And also, bearing in mind what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old, what did your parents tell you to do, or guide you to do?
Okay, I'll start. So I think one particular thing about my childhood is that my family emigrated from China. My parents emigrated my dad first when I was about 2, so I was actually born in China. And one thing that I realized is he was able to accomplish all that he could, and same with my mom, was actually through education. And so that's why, with Givology, we are an organization that's focused on education. And, for me, seeing it firsthand on how they could go from what they had in China to what we have now, what they're able to give me now, is just one of the most incredible things. And that's really why, I'm so passionate about education and Givology, because, it's really the tool out there for anything development-wise in any country, and it's really the long-term solution. So seeing it firsthand and how much my family emphasized education was just an incredible thing, and instilled those values in me.
I'm not gonna let you talk, Ben, because I want to mix it up here. So yeah.
So I guess my parents would have been okay with me becoming a superhero if I really wanted to. But what they always stressed was just whatever you're going to do, do it well and do it right. And an experience that really shaped the business that I'm here presenting today, and my overall experience was I spent a lot of time working on my family farm, running that business and really getting my hands dirty and doing that work. And the PowerFlower is solar for farmers, so you can see how that sort of translated into what I'm doing today. And I think that went a long way to make me sort of who I am today and get me in the right state of mind.
So, Jason, where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey. We have farms there, I promise. Down south.
And your father, what did he do?
So my father is a consultant by day and farmer by night. So
really?
We sort of set up a family farm as a hobby / way to make his children work very hard.
Wow. So you really worked on the farm growing up?
Every weekend we would go down Saturday, Sunday, and they would work. They'd work us hard. We did a lot of the manual labor, a lot of the more sort of technical stuff with the equipment. We grew grapes in New Jersey. I know it's crazy. You guys do it right out here in California. We do an okay job in New Jersey.
I'm kind of on the fence about how much each of you should explain your businesses. I mean, most people got it. I mean, would you like to hear sort of a brief explanation of each business? Would that help? Or yeah. Okay. So Jason, why don't you explain what?
I'll give you the very brief explanation.
Yeah. Let's be brief with these. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so I'll give you the loud and brief explanation. So the PowerFlower is portable, durable solar for farmers. And that's it. That's all you need to know.
And then your other invention over
so
here.
I've got something else going on. Another thing I've been developing recently, which is a robotic linkage that can give you actuation like you'd find in your shoulder. So we can drive this kind of motion in a much more elegant way than the current systems do it.
And the idea of applying solar power to farm work, is that an untapped niche? Or
yeah, so the benefits of solar are pretty clear to farmers, but they have a hard time implementing the standard panel just for the way it integrates into what they do. So we've developed a solution that allows them to take advantage of that additional source of income. Farming is a pretty terrible business however you cut it, and this gives them a way to improve that business and improve their well-being and quality of life.
Terrific. So give a sense of each of you of your businesses in the context of kind of how you were guided by your parents as you were growing up.
Well, I think my parents have extremely huge faith. That I remember when I was 13 years old, it just burned into my mind that I have to be a car designer. And, you know, I started to draw cars on paper, but actually my father already knew that I have no talent for that totally. but it's interesting that however, my father told that to me. But he saw that it doesn't matter that he tells this to me, but I still want to be a car designer. So they always supported me in everything what I started to do. And I think it's a very important thing that they leave me space to figure out what am I want to be and how am I want to reach my aims. And I always get the support. And so today also my father is the CEO. So
your father is the CEO of your company?
Yes, in our company.
Is he?
Yeah.
And you're the chairman?
No, I'm the CTO, so I'm doing the technology. Really? Yeah.
And what does your father do what was his, before you created this career for him, what did he do?
My father's original job is a horse rider.
A horse rider? Wow.
He started to work when he was 14 years old, so that's...
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you mean a horse? Like what?
It's like, you know, this. There's a horse and there's a.
So technical.
I don't know in English how that kind of horse riding is. He wasn't sitting on the horse.
Is he a cowboy?
No, it's a horse. Yeah, there's the two-wheel vehicle, and there's the front of the car, and people just saying go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow.
But this was his first job after he went to be a journalist, because he was writing about these horses and about what's going on in the race.
Boy, you changed his life.
And and after that he went to the national television, and I don't know if there's a American Idol. It's on the TV. Well, he did this in Hungary, just not Hungarian, but it was in the long time. Those times there was only one TV in Hungary, so it was a little different. But he was searching talented peoples all around Hungary, and talented Hungarians outside from Hungary, because half of the Hungarians not living in Hungary. So it's good because he has an experience how to find people, how to organize people.
Right.
And you know, my brother was in a business school, so it's fortunately together with the family we could get together everything to establish a company.
That's terrific. Daniel, just explain very briefly what your product does.
So we made a virtual reality product with which you can make a full virtual reality on your home desktop PC. So you know that the PC have a two-dimensional environment, so 2D mouse, 2D monitor, and so on. And we can put this whole thing into 3D so that you can see in the space, and it's in this 3D vision you can interact with that in space. So we got a tool called Bird. So the 3D mouse is a bird, and just like that you have a 3D pointing device. And we built up the whole hardware environment, so we got a quite revolutionary position tracking system, visualization system. We've built up the full API, so the application programming interface that anyone can also develop softwares for this platform. And we also developed a couple of softwares for this platform because you have to at the first time you have to develop the softwares for your own platform. And but in this we also made a quite interesting technology because for the first time in the world we made a real-time polygon optimization 3D sculpting, which means that the surface, that the surface in the computer stays from polygons, from triangles.
Okay, don't get too detailed.
Okay.
Everybody needs to talk here. It's fascinating, and it's really, really cool. And if you weren't over there, check it out before you leave tonight. I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to. That was great.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that was fast. I was like, in case you haven't checked out his stuff, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm Josh. I guess to echo what Jason and Daniel were saying, my parents encouraged me to basically do whatever I wanted to do and pursue what I was passionate about. And I guess another theme was I was constantly doing stuff and being encouraged to pursue those things that I was interested in. So I did a lot of different things at one time. So playing sports or playing chess. Yes.
Yeah, he was like a chess champion, like a world champion kind of chess player.
I'm kind of a dork. So constantly pursuing lots of extracurricular activities, and I think that's sort of carried through in college when I really focused almost as much on my extracurriculars, if not more, than on my studies. And so I got very involved in student government, and one of the projects that we worked on was this sort of Valentine's Day crush finder. And worked on that, and it was a pretty big success. People seemed to like it. And then when I graduated, then I was supposed to go into consulting. But I got really bored after graduation and needed to do something because I just constantly felt like I needed to do something, I guess stemming from childhood. And so I said, okay, let's go back to that crush finder. People seem to like it. And so now I'm here. So GoodCrush is a social dating site for college students. Obviously, I was scratching my own itch, I guess. And in terms of agility, we also work on randomdorm.com, which is like chat roulette but for college students.
Great. Ben?
So I was actually an only grandchild growing up, which meant that I spent a ton of time on my own. And my parents really supported anything that I was doing that was creative-oriented, so I always did a ton of art. I grew up playing with Lego. I had boxes and boxes of Legos. And one of the things that I always did is when I'd get a kit, I'd never build it was actually on the box. I'd always come up with my own inventions. And growing up, these hobbies ended up giving me a new lens to look at, or to look through when I was solving problems. So when I got to high school and I started doing science fair projects, I was able to come up with these really innovative solutions to real problems. And now that in the business world with, the Uno that I have and the DTV, these are, very unique vehicles that have never really been done before but still have real world applications.
So explain what each of these are.
So the Uno the Uno started off as a science fair project, like I said, and it's a sort of a hybrid between a unicycle and a street bike. And one of the really neat things about it, well, A, it's completely green and electric, and B, when it hits 12 miles an hour, it actually transforms, changing shape from unicycle mode to street bike. So essentially it's the world's first real transformer. And, we're going to be coming out with the new design in June, and I think it's going to be really neat. Hopefully people like it. The DTV is my other company, which is a new kind of all-terrain vehicle. It started off, me and my friend wanted to make a new vehicle that we could ride around on in the wintertime and without needing a whole bunch of extra equipment. 3 years later, we have a really rugged, powerful platform that's completely all-terrain year-round. And now we're doing testing with the military for our medevac. We were just recently sponsored by Rockstar Energy in the extreme sports world, and we're trying to get it out there as a new commercial sport.
Very cool. Who has a question? Oh, come on. Okay.
Okay.
Ben, the Uno's a lot like the Segway in some ways. What differentiates it in the marketplace, and why is it cooler, and why is it going to be more successful than the Segway was?
Dean Kamen's not in the room right now, so I can talk freely, I suppose. So for me, the big thing when I first started the Uno project is I realized that we're such a visual society. Vehicles, they're not just modes to get from point A to point B. They're status symbols. You want to look cool riding something. That's why Lamborghinis and Ferraris sell. So I wanted to come up with something that was green and electric and also looked really good. And although the balancing system is very similar to the Segway in the first prototype I came out with, it looks way better. And this isn't a vehicle that you'll ride on the sidewalk. It's supposed to be a vehicle that will be roadworthy. And the new bike we're coming out with has a top speed of 30 miles an hour, which actually lets us get certified for road use.
So what are the lessons that you learned as a young entrepreneur, and what is it that you can teach all of us to be a successful entrepreneur?
So the biggest lesson that I learned is you just have to follow your passion. And if you really believe in something, you have to just go do it.
I think one of the things that they don't teach us in business school that I'm sure many of you in the room have realized is the importance of a network and knowing the right people to get these projects to go from the idea stage to a reality. I mean, you can do all the tinkering you want in the lab working on something, but until you get out, start talking to people, building the connections that you need, it's going to go nowhere. And the Kairos Society has been a real big player in allowing us to get those connections that we need to really build our business and get it moving. And it's all about the people that we know. The technology is very important, but people, that's what it's all about, and they don't really teach you that in school. So
yeah, it's one of our, so it's, for me it's also a big experience that seeing my company, that how it grows. I think the most important value is in the people who are working in the company. So it was extremely hard to find the right group of people to this project. And after a time, when you see their passion and how they are working, I think this is the biggest value. And another important thing which I have learned that no matter, it doesn't matter what do I think about the future, how it can be a business plan or it can be anything else. So it doesn't matter what do I think about the future. I'm wrong. So it's because the future is just too much complex, too much more complex than that you can imagine. And I think that if you are aware of that, at the moment when you are thinking about it, it doesn't matter what I'm thinking, I'm wrong, then you can change your mind faster, and you can, you can interact with the future faster. Does it make sense? So you can change your mind faster.
Just touching on that, someone asked me a question earlier. Did any of you guys write business plans? You guys wrote business plans? Okay. Well, when you're working on a sort of Web 2.0 company, such as a dating site, that doesn't necessarily involve a lot of technology, like really cool technology, we just sort of build a social network and out it goes. One thing that's really useful is getting customer feedback as quickly as possible, and I'm sure it applies to all of you as well. So for us, we didn't even have a business plan. We just sort of built it and let it out there. Again, speaking to the agility, you just want to throw products out there, see what users like, our customers like, and respond to what your customers and users are interested in. And also, as Daniel was saying, be aware of other opportunities that you might not have envisioned otherwise.
So you didn't ever write a business plan. So who'd you get your money from?
So we did have a business plan, but just going back to what Daniel was saying, you very quickly learn that you need to throw that out. And the best use of the business plan is for your own edification if you're doing sort of lower tech stuff, at least from my experience. So a deck and an executive summary was sufficient, not necessarily a 10, 15-page business plan.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, and you continue to adapt it.
Yeah, it is a lot about iteration and sort of continuous deployment, both in the fundraising process and in the product development process.
See, I actually had a business plan for the Uno, and according to what I told my investors 2 years ago, the Unos would already be all over the road by now. So he's dead on saying that the business plans get outdated very quickly.
How many of these are actually exist?
So we have 3 now. Now we're building the 4th, the transforming one, and that's the model that we're hoping to actually start selling.
And how fast does this one go?
So this one is going to go 30 miles an hour when it's finished.
Right.
And the shredder as well has a top speed of 30 miles right now.
Okay. The one that the 3 though that are built, how fast do they go?
The top one went 15 miles an hour.
15.
Pretty scary. That's why we're switching to the new.
Are they the Segway is easy to ride. Is this easy to ride?
Actually, so this one is very easy. One of the modifications with the very first prototype I had, everything was done by leaning. So you lean forward to speed up, you lean back to slow down. Steering is done by leaning to the sides. In order to fit in with the more motorcycle type vehicle class, we wanted to create a user interface that was just like motorcycles. So when the front wheel swings forward, the handlebars lock into place, and they actually have active steering just like a normal bike. And in Uno mode, when you turn the handlebars, it controls how fast the inner or outer wheels speed up. And we have a throttle to control speed. So it has the exact same user interface as a normal motorcycle.
Interesting. What do you see as the use for these mainly?
For which one?
Oh, well, okay. No, I'm talking about the Uno. Yeah.
So for the Uno, I mean, it's really a statement as to what the potential in electric vehicles can be. And when I started, I just wanted to show that being green could be cool. Now that I'm actually trying to sell something, I mean, it's a new type of urban commuting vehicle that can get you anywhere, through the city. And at the same time, you have something small enough that you can actually bring indoors, you can plug into your apartment. And at the same time, it's not something that you're supposed to hide in a closet. It's a style symbol as well that you can leave out.
The red is nice. The red's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Back there. I'll wait for the mic. Oh, I'm sorry, Catherine. I skipped you on the lesson.
The passion, that's what I was going to say, actually. But actually, one thing I would add to that is to set lofty goals. Because one thing, when we started Givology, which it's basically a nonprofit organization that fundraises for student scholarships and schools around the world, one thing that we thought, hey, we're all students, so what can we actually accomplish? And I think with strong leadership and setting really high goals for ourselves, we actually, pushed ourselves to reach those goals. And I think, if you don't believe, in your leadership and your team, then nothing can ever get accomplished. So I think setting really high goals and just, going for it is, what it's all about.
Big, hairy, audacious goals, as they say, right? Yes.
Hi, I was just curious, how do you spend your time? I guess, have you sacrificed anything? Like, do you watch less TV than the average person your age?
And how much sleep do you get?
It's usually loss of sleep. So I think most of us up here like to, don't want to be sort of working all the time, and we combine our work and sort of the fun that we have. And it comes out of sleep, usually.
How much sleep do you get?
During the school year when things are really moving, probably like 4 hours a night. So it works, though.
I would say it's sleep, but also you can combine your passion. So for me, a lot of my friends actually participate in Givology. So, when we're working on it together, it's kind of a social hour and also a working hour. So it's sort of like, I guess, what's the saying? 2 birds with 1 stone? So,
yeah. Right.
For me, it was definitely the social life. When I was in high school, I mean, I wasn't going to parties and things on weekends. I was in the basement working at science fair projects. Who'd have thought 3 years later I get to go to the Playboy Mansion now? But
what, riding that thing in?
But at the same time, though, one of the things that's great about Kairos is that it lets you actually network with people that are doing the same cool stuff. I mean, the event in New York was great because suddenly I met a whole bunch of people all in Boston that are all my age starting their own companies. And it's really neat to be able to actually hang out with people that are doing the same things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Where did you grow up in?
I grew up outside of Toronto in Canada.
Yeah, I hear the Canadian accent.
Yeah. I get that all the time. I don't know. You Americans just talk funny.
Right. Anybody else? Sacrifice. Big.
In terms of TV, I didn't really watch TV in college. It was helpful to not have one in accomplishing that. I think the killing two birds with one stone is very important, especially because of the social discussion that was talked about earlier. Because often you can't go out to the parties, and so you create a dating site to help you meet people. And you do it with your very close friends. I'm working with Jain, for example, and when we're spending time working, it's really a lot of fun. And that's why we're able to put in significant hours. And it doesn't really feel like work. It feels like doing something that's really, really cool that you're passionate about.
Well, I usually work about 16 hours a day, so there is not too much time. But I don't really feel this as a sacrifice because, first of all, I love my job. So I love to do the development. I love to be in my company and be together with those people who I can work together with. And on the other hand, I think it's a most beautiful thing in a person's life if you can find something in which you can really believe. So I think it's it's just to wake up that your invention can save people's lives. Your invention can change a culture. And it's if every day different people are coming to you and I can do this, use this for this kind of medical application, for this kind of educational applications, for I don't know, just a lot of things. And after that you cannot ask yourself that how much time do I spend with this and does it worth or this kind of questions. After a time you just happy to live like that because you can wake up every day and you can feel that your life has an aim and I think the worst thing it's when you are on the end of your life and you look back and you can feel that you was throwing away your life, and I never want this to happen. So I hope I answered your question.
Great. So are you all members of Kairos? And why did you join Kairos? What does that bring to you?
So I actually heard about Kairos a year before I first came to the summit from one of my close friends who's also close friends with Ankur, coincidentally. And then I heard about it again, had an opportunity to get involved through one of our NYU campus reps who unfortunately couldn't be here today. And so we went to Kairos and we got to see all of these entrepreneurs who were really excited about getting involved in projects and wanting to sort of go out and change the world. And we got to meet all these people who are like us, thinking about, okay, how can we make a difference? What kind of ideas can we come up with and what can we act on? And they're all across the country and world, actually. So that's one of the really exciting aspects of it. And I think Jason touched on it with the network of people.
That's great.
So I actually first was exposed to Kairos when it was a crazy entrepreneurial idea that Ankur had. So I met him when he was a freshman at Penn, and I'm a little bit older than him. So I was sort of the old soul kind of saying, well, that would be amazing, but can you really pull that off? And he did. Like a year later, the conference was in New York on the Intrepid, and it was at on the floor of the trading floor this year. So it's really been watching that is why I wanted to get involved. I was like, holy cow, if you could get this going in a year, this is going places. This is something I want to be a part of, and we've gotten great contacts out of it. It's been a really valuable thing for our business.
And one thing I would add is, so the school that I attend is the University of Pennsylvania, and one sort of culture shock that I had when I first got there was, man, a lot of people really have the same goals. I talked to some of my fellow, some in the Wharton School, and it's the business school at Penn, and and asked them what they wanted to do. They were like my 10-year-old self. Oh, I want to be a banker, and I want to go into consulting. And those are the only two answers that I got. And I think what Kairos really does is it offers students and this opportunity that, hey, there's a lot more out there that you can do. You can be so creative and so unique and really, pave your own path and do what you're passionate about. And I think that's, Ankur, like, great job, because I think that's really awesome.
Good, good. Any question over here? Ryan.
Hey, so for those of you who did big engineering efforts, how did you get financing for the R&D or the prototyping? And then those of you who have websites, are you technical people, or did you outsource the back end part of the site, developing that to do the matches or the Givology? Just kind of how did you get that organized if you're more business oriented rather than tech oriented, or are you tech oriented?
Okay, I'll go first. I have no tech skills, and basically we have about 30 core team members who work on Givology, on a weekly basis, and very minimal tech skills. So we have one PhD student at Penn who, coded the entire website and then made it so that, we who have no tech skills could actually, update the content.
So for me, I did the beg, borrow, steal approach. For the science fair, I'd grown up in machine shops. I knew how to weld and use the lathe and use milling machines when I was like 12 years old. So I actually built the first prototype all on my own. And at that point on, then I just started going out and asking for favors. And the biggest thing for me is I had to get the prototype to a point where it looked like it was a finished product so that people could buy into my vision. And for that, I did have to use a lot of favors and go and beg for help. At that point, once the publicity came, I went out and just asked. Well, actually, for the Uno, people came and were throwing money at me. And I got very lucky, and I got to set a very high valuation for the company. And for websites, even now I have a guy who does the website. He's done everything for free because he uses it in his portfolio. I have a painter who does free paint jobs because he sticks his logo on the bike. And I've been able to get a lot of things done with spending very little money.
So yeah, we took a similar approach to the beg, borrow, and steal. We got a lot of support from the University of Pennsylvania. We were in the same boat. We needed a prototype that proved what we were doing before people even wanted to talk to us, which is the hard part about hardware. Website, you can sort of put it together and put it up there, but this is a complicated solar device, so we had to show that we could do it before anybody even wanted to talk to us. And we got a lot of funding from the university through different programs that we applied to. And we just did the borrow from family and anybody who would give us anything. And we got a long way on nothing, and we just got a large grant from the state of New Jersey to continue R&D and to do developments. That's been huge for us.
It's large. How large is it?
It's $500,000 of R&D money. So we are very excited to get moving on that. And we should be through development with a fully functional production-ready prototype in just over a year. So we are very excited to get a little bit of... We've been doing a lot with very little, and now we have what we need to really make this thing work.
So how did you... we were talking about this a little earlier, and like 4 weeks ago you got that? And,
yeah, this was about, I would say, 4 weeks to a month.
And was that... what's the secret to getting that, and did you expect to get that, or was it kind of a crapshoot?
So we were hopeful. I guess
Okay.
we felt good at the end, but it was a random event that set the whole thing in motion. So I work at a farmer's market at home, and I met the Secretary of Agriculture, or the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture at the farmer's market. He'd been a customer of mine, and we got talking about this project that I was working on. He brought us in through the government to all the people that he knew, and through all the other organizations. We eventually ended up sitting at a table with some people who were giving out a grant. The application was due in a week, and they said, okay, well, if you guys can get your stuff together, you're a pretty good fit. But the problem was that we needed matching funds lined up. And we're like, okay, in a week, can we pull that off? We actually went up to one of our potential investors and said, hey, we got this grant opportunity. What can you do for us? And he said, well, I'll put the money up if you guys can do the application in 4 days. That was fun.
This person put up $500,000?
So they put up a promise of if we got the grant, they would put up the $250,000 that we needed.
Wow.
Just saying, hey, if you guys can pull this off, we'll do it. And in 4 days, we're students, so working nonstop for 4 days was totally something that we were used to. So we put together a very solid grant application in a very short period of time and got it in. And it was a sort of like 8-month vetting process with like pitches in there and talking to all the right people. And a lot of it came down to the context that we had and the sort of insight that they gave us into the process and how to actually make it through. So we applied in September, pitched in January, and then finally found out just recently. So it's been a long process, but one that has been incredibly helpful to us.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. Thanks. In my case, I just sort of built it myself. I wouldn't consider myself extremely technical. I'm not managing the ins and outs of every line that's being coded, but I'd consider myself literate, and so I put together this very simple prototype that obviously didn't require funds. And we got such strong user traction that investors were like, hey, this seems interesting.
So about the technology, I had my first invention when I was, if I remember well, when I was 5 or 6 years old. It was a shower machine that you have to pump, and the shower came out. So,
and that was an advance on something.
So it worked with air pressure, and I just realized that if I put in the air, then the water comes up.
Wow, good. That's great. What did you call it?
Yeah.
What did you call it at 5?
Just a shower machine. So about the technology, I had a shocking moment in my life when I was 16 years old. And this was my first programming lesson in the school. So, and most of the students, it was the beginning of the nightmares. So, for all of my classmates, or for my classmates, it was the hardest lesson because programming is always the hardest part. But for me, it was quite shocking that when you feel that the whole world opens in front of you, and only your imagination is the bound there. So, and I remember that, wow, it was, after the second week, we got our first homework, and I wrote my first computer game, and it was also very cool that I put it was a floppy disk, and I put it into the school, and the whole class started to play with my first computer game, and there was 2 rooms nearby each other. I went to the other room, and everybody was playing with that, and there was the teacher, and she couldn't give the lesson because everybody was playing with my computer game.
All right.
So it was the first experience is how you feel the success. It can also grab you, and so yes, and about the funding. It's I made the first version of Leonardo when I was 18 years old, and I went to the high school competition in Hungary. I could get to the international final, which was the Intel ISF, and there, fortunately, I could get 6 first prizes. And after that, I came back to Hungary, and it was easier to get governmental grants for the project. So.
And how old are you now?
25.
And where did you go to college?
Sorry?
Where did you go to college?
Well, actually, I was for 1.5 months in university. It was the University of Engineering in Budapest. But this was just 1.5 months because, I didn't have time for university. Simply I couldn't read my notes. So it's after time.
Wow.
So like that, we could apply for governmental grants, and together there's about $2 million at the moment in the company.
Terrific. Okay, so you all figured out what you're good at. What aren't you good at, and how did you deal with that in terms of either? And I mean this is a question that I often ask, like CEOs of big companies. What is the thing that they've had to work on throughout their career to become better at? And some say patience, some say focus. So go there. What have you had to work on?
Hiring. Getting good people is very difficult, and I think everyone here has touched on it already, that it's really all about team. It's not just the work that's being accomplished and the sort of efficiency of that process, but also the enjoyment thereof. And if you're working with someone that you really don't like, you're not going to enjoy the experience of doing the project. So I very quickly found out that I wasn't the best at hiring when I started out, and I had some unfortunate experiences. But then I quickly iterated and realized that there are things that you can do and things you can look out for to improve that experience. And by the same token, if you do that with everything, obviously you won't be great at everything, but I've been able to unearth some knowledge about things that I otherwise wouldn't have known about just by iterating and engaging in a lot of different things and engaging with a lot of different people and getting a lot of different perspectives.
I'm just going to build off that because mine is kind of similar. So Givology is a 100% volunteer-based organization. So that means we don't have any full-time staff. We don't pay anyone to do it. So I think that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a great thing because everything is free for us. You know, we get people to donate a little bit of their time, their talent, their resources, and, you know, we get a lot out of it. But one thing that we experienced the first year was, you know, we're trying to manage, you know, 100 different people, you know, all with this tiny little project, and it's very, very difficult for, you know, full-time students or full-time young professionals to do that. And I think one thing that we sort of changed, you know, the second year was we really just had to be, you know, a lot more selective in who we would, you know, ask to help out with different volunteer projects. And I think in doing that, you know, we were still able to get a lot of free, you know, service hours, but at the same time, the quality went way up.
One of the things that sorry, I don't want to steal your thought completely, that I've had to deal with a lot is getting away from micromanaging. When I first started these projects, the team was just me. And then I took 2 years off after high school to build out the team and start working on the Uno. Then I started school, then I started the second company, which is actually based out of Toronto, while I lived in Boston. And I had to learn how to really stay almost hands-off, get as much information as I needed to make decisions at our weekly meetings, and especially managing a company that was in a different country while we're going through development process and raising money. And now I'm taking this semester off school to, again, refocus the companies, and then I want to go back full-time in the fall. And it's been a very difficult process in making companies independent, but it's still at a point where I'm making the decisions. And that's been a pretty big learning curve for me.
So how many people are you working
So we have 2 separate teams of 5 people, 5 core people for the Uno, 5 core people for the DTV. They have separate offices, separate machine shops, and then there's sort of, we farm out additional work because a lot of specialists are expensive. So if we need, you know, specialists for a few hours of their time, it's better to do that than hire them. So then there's like maybe 8 people that sort of advise the company.
How much money have you raised?
So for the Uno, I've raised a little over $1 million for it, and for the DTV, I've now raised $250.
Good. Great.
So I'm an engineer and a designer by training, so I'm trained to be very honest and like very direct and about sort of things, and that makes me not great at sales. So there are better ways to say certain things in the way that I would tend to say them about our product, and that's one of my weaknesses, so sales and networking. And I found, actually in a lifelong friend of mine, a friend from kindergarten, somebody who is very, very good at that. So I've sort of offset my own sort of, you know, the things that I've been trained to do by somebody who is very skilled in that, the art of sales, where I'm good at the art of engineering. He is excellent at that. So just offset it by finding somebody who's very talented that I can trust to handle the things that I'm not so good at.
Terrific.
Well, I think one of the most important things that if you are able to change. So, you know, because I remember when we started the company, or we had so silly imaginations about what is it meant to have a company or to build up a company, and you have to learn really fast if you want to keep up. So I think one of the most important things what you have to learn is how to change completely in things. And but even then you have to be able about your boundaries, because here also the sales it's another profession, and you can't do everything by yourself. So you need to trust your people, and you need to open for the world. That's the only way how you can succeed. And you know, it's a very interesting thing that I have heard so many times that, be careful that no one will steal your technology and just grab it and just have it and so on. And but you cannot live in fear. So it's you have to open to the world. You have to trust always again and again in the other people. And of course you have to keep your eyes open. And if you notice signs, you have to do what you have to do, but this is also a very important thing, I think.
Good. Yes, over here. Wait for the mic. Oh, right back there, yeah.
Right.
Yep, and then
Well,
up here.
Okay, well, you guys covered a lot of what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about the team, ask you about how you found your team members and who comprised your team. And since that was one of the 10 lessons of entrepreneurs in that book. So I'll just ask about another one of the lessons, which is trust your gut instinct. Has there been times where you trusted your gut instinct over what was the common consensus of other people, what people were saying?
What were you going to say, Ben?
Never mind, someone else can go.
So we're developing solar for farms, and one of the big arguments that we've run across in dealing with investors who are less informed is that farmers don't use electricity. So we had to deal with oh yeah, that's a hard argument to win. And our sort of research and the gut instinct was yes, solar is good for farmers, and we had to fight a lot of hard battles with different investors and people who might have been interested, trying to prove that and trying to convince them that it was right. So that was one area where it was tough, and we sort of changed our strategy a couple of times in the beginning, trying to say, okay, maybe they're right, maybe let's go somewhere place else, but we ended up back and been able to raise the money with that original core argument of saying farmers do use electricity, they need solar. So we wavered a bit, but then when we came back to trusting our instincts, it actually worked out very nicely.
You had a question right here. Yep, right here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you had any legal issues that you had to deal with, but I am guessing you're from Canada and then you're from Hungary, that might have some issues, but I'll pose the question more broadly. What was the biggest hurdle you had to get past?
So can you repeat the question?
What was the biggest hurdle, challenge that you had to get past? Was it legal or any other issues that you had to deal with or think about?
Hurdle.
Well, the hardest challenge, it's hard to point one thing. It's very interesting that as much as I remember, well, the hardest part was not to make the technology. So, because you just close your eyes, you start to think on solutions, and if it comes, it comes. So, but to build up the company, it's first of all, to find the right people. For example, our employers for several, we find them in several ways. A couple of employers we found through newspaper advertisement, some of them through connections.
I'm going to stop you here because we want hurdles. We want your worst challenge, your worst day, something that you didn't think you were going to get through. Ben's dying to talk here.
So for me, the worst probably happened last year, 2 weeks into my first semester at MIT. The recession is full gone, in full force. And when I started school, I had anticipated closing on a deal for $1.25 million. And 2 weeks later, all that money was suddenly gone. The investors weren't picking up the phone as if they didn't exist anymore. I had another investor who'd put $500K in, and then I ended up having to give the $500K back. And I just lost. I'd anticipated raising a whole bunch more money. Everything was supposed to be set up, and I was going to be able to focus on school. Suddenly it's holy shit, my world is falling apart. What am I going to do? And I basically stopped going to class to raise the money I needed, because I made all these plans. I'd signed a lease for an office, I'd hired people, and suddenly I couldn't pay them anymore. And I had to start from scratch, raising all the money again. And I did it in probably one of the worst times economically, and I was able to raise it at a very high valuation still. And that was one of the toughest things I've had to go through in a while. So I actually had to raise twice the amount of money that I ended up with.
Oh, and that. There was one point when we put it to outsource to make the position tracking system to our system, and we asked the company to develop a camera-based position tracking system. And they made a couple of researches, how much will it cost, and it turned up that the product at the end user price would cost several times more than we expected. And I was like that oh my gosh, everything what we did before, it's just we can put it into the trash if we don't solve this problem. And actually that was the point when the present solution came. And I had some unsleepy nights, but fortunately it succeeded.
So I guess it's the reason why I brought up hiring. My biggest obstacle was the first guy that I worked with. I feel like most founders have war stories. Mine is in the Hall of Fame. And I actually didn't trust my gut instinct, which is something I definitely should have done with him. But anyway, so when you're pre-product, it's very, very frustrating, and you don't have that sort of motivation and inspiration that you do when you actually see it live. And so really getting the product to market, and all the trials and tribulations that you experience before that, that's really a huge hurdle.
Without getting into too much detail and ratting on your on your friend who's no longer a friend, I guess. It was not a friend. But without getting into details, what's the lesson about, okay, so you didn't go with your gut, you shouldn't have trusted this person, but what beyond that can you share in terms of sort of advice?
What were the red flags that you thought you saw but you didn't quite see?
Yeah, that's a good way of asking.
Speed of development, which actually isn't something that you should really look at necessarily, because it's not about how long it takes, but rather the quality. But with him, it was really, really slow. And it was clear that he had some experience, but he wasn't really in a position to manage the code base, which is really what I needed someone to do. Is really be that technical lead that you can trust 100%. And if you don't have someone that you can trust 100%, you're going to go drive yourself crazy and start micromanaging, and then it's even worse than having someone who's not effective, because you're making yourself ineffective as well.
That's a very good point. Yeah, if you don't have someone you can trust 100%, you will be micromanaging. So true.
It's in our company also was a very shocking thing when I had to fire for the first time one of our employers, and actually he was our development. At that time he was the CTO, and after when you see about a person that you know exactly that he is lying to your face, and you can just see his mouth moving, and you know what comes out, it's simply not true. It's a shocking feeling, and even when we are very young, and for example, when we started this company, I would never believe that I can lead a development team like that. So we tried to find someone who can do this, and of course he could be my grandfather, and it's also very hard thing to say to somebody who you previously trusted very much, who you thought that he's your patronate or he's your mentor, and once you just have to say that you're fired because I don't trust you.
Ben?
So very similar experience actually to what you sort of had. For the Uno, when I was in school, we'd set up this team. We had some very senior people working on the project. The company was just bleeding money, and then I decided to take a semester off. And the first thing I did is I got rid of almost the whole development team that we had. And I hired these much younger, much cheaper people. And in the first month of them working, we'd done more development than 6 months of having these other senior people. And the development has been accelerating very quickly. Now we're coming out with a new prototype that we're going to actually hopefully bring to production soon. And sometimes you just have to shake things up, and when things aren't working, you can't keep spending the money. You have to make a change.
Did you say you hired students to replace these?
No,
not students.
Still weren't students. I mean, they have lots of experience, but they were younger. Their salaries were lower, and there's just a hunger, because sometimes, in my experience with some of the more senior people that I've had to deal with, it can be seen as just simply a paychecker. If they have a house and they have commitments, they have mortgage payments, they have a family. Whereas if you have someone younger who doesn't have as many ties, they can sleep on the couch all night at the office, and they can pull the all-nighters, and you can get much more productivity.
Interesting.
I'll just say the flip side of that. So I think for Givology, one of our biggest hurdles is simply the fact that we are full-time students and we are, young professionals. So, the core team is made up full-time students and young professionals, and one really lacking thing that we found in the last 2 years is that we lack the professional experience, to, throw really ritzy fundraisers and to do really I guess targeted marketing and a lot of different things, especially with legal. To sort of go back to your question, we for the first year and a half we were not a 501c3 nonprofit, so that's the actual U.S. government sort of stamp of approval, you could say. And so at one point we were being fiscally sponsored, so we actually did have a sort of, tax-exempt status, but the nonprofit that was sponsoring us said, oh, hey, this is too tough for us to do on our taxes, so we're just going to drop it. And all of a sudden, all of the different donations that we had before, we had told these donors, this is tax exempt, and it wasn't anymore because this nonprofit dropped us. And so I think the way that we overcame that was we found a pro bono lawyer who was able to help us, get our 501c3, et cetera. But I think one challenge that we do have is that we are students and we don't necessarily have that professional experience. So we are always looking for, older people with more experience.
No, having specialists in some fields is very important. I mean, I have a legal team that I owe more money to. That, I mean, they're never going to see their money. But, because you need advice when you're filing for patents, when you're setting up companies, when you're closing on investments. I mean, you need to do things properly. What I was talking about before is about spending money is like for programmers. I'd rather have like 3 cheap programmers who can work 18-hour days than one really, really expensive programmer. Just because you can, I think it's more bang for your buck.
Yeah, I was actually just about to echo what Ben was suggesting. As soon as you said you were able to accomplish more with people that weren't necessarily as experienced, you obviously need a minimum threshold of experience for something. But one of the red flags with people is what it means to really care about something, especially your project. And you can very quickly see when someone else doesn't really care at all. So if you're working with someone who has, let's say, 5 years of experience instead of 10 years of experience, just throwing that out there. They obviously have significant experience, but if they really care and they're passionate, it's not necessarily that they are going to work 18-hour days, but it's that they want to work 18-hour days. It's that they want to keep putting more time in, and they really care. And that's not something that you can buy or find in a resume.
Jason, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the hardest thing that we had to do is, and I think it's true in any project, you kind of have that initial phase where everything is going great, it's a new idea, it's very fresh, and then eventually you raise money and things get good. But in the middle there's a dip when a rational person will look at the reasons to do it and the reasons not to do it, and they might make a different decision than what we did. And that point of saying, you know what, yeah, we've heard all these things, but we're going to go ahead and give this a shot, and actually making that decision and putting it on the line was not easy, and one that it took us we spent there was a pretty down week somewhere in there where we really were seriously considering saying, this is enough, it went well, let's stop. But that was a year and a half ago, and look at where we are today. So things definitely worked out. But that decision of looking at it and saying, okay, this is risky, but we're going to do it is very hard, especially in today's economy. So.
Yes.
When you're an entrepreneur.
Wait. Yeah, wait.
So as an entrepreneur in the Valley, sometimes age is not a limiting factor. Being from different countries, can you talk about how you got respect? Just like a little...
We wore suits.
Anything else? I'd
Josh
love to hear...
is in his pinstripes here. He's...
So for me, age has actually been a huge asset. When all this stuff started for me, I was a 17-year-old kid who wanted to save the world one electric unicycle at a time. Now, when I was going to motorcycle shows and things, I can't help but wonder if it was a 40-year-old guy with some weird-looking electric vehicle, would it have got the same amount of attention and publicity and respect as, a kid who was really trying to make a difference? And there's been an evolution. I mean, now I'm 21 and I can't really use that story anymore. But, it's been an evolution, but at the very beginning, being young really helped. So.
Yeah, and besides just wearing suits, I mean, we got a lot of disrespect for being like young people with a crazy idea that required a good amount of capital to make it happen. And the way that we got around that was becoming experts at what we were talking about. So we have great answers for any question, and we really, really had to know our stuff, more so than an older person who's more experienced, because we had to offset the fact that we had never done this before. And oh, by the way, can you give us $1 million? I mean, that's no one likes to hear that. And now that we have the government money, that certainly helps the argument too. But we really had to become the experts at what we were doing and know the arguments in and out to be able to prove to people that, yeah, we're competent, we can make this happen.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You have to be knowledgeable. I remember this one time we were at a conference and we were talking to somebody about social entrepreneurship, and she was criticizing, sort of our peer-to-peer model. And, one thing that sort of we had this long discussion about, what are the correct metrics to use with education, what is a correct sort of social entrepreneurship model for education in the developing world. And one thing that, she said was at the very end of our conversation was, I still don't really agree with, what you guys are doing with this particular model, but I respect you a lot because you are so knowledgeable about, the issue, what all is going on, keeping up with the current trends. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because earlier today I was at a place, I won't say the name, and they saw me in my suit, and this guy was like, "Good luck." I'm assuming he thought I was going for an interview. That wasn't exactly the case, but I think the point about suits and the reason why we both sort of instantly thought about that is because there is a lot of truth to that. You need to look the part, and you need to act the part, and you need to have the knowledge to back up that you deserve their attention, their time, their attention, and ultimately their resources, be it financial or otherwise.
Yeah, so I have actually my suits in the van outside, but this is the West Coast. So I was told, no, don't put the suit on, just toss a nice shirt on, which I love. So I like the way you guys do things out here.
Wow. That's
apparently, if you wear a suit, it means you're going for a job interview.
Yes, right here.
Thanks a lot for being out here. I think you guys are all working on some really cool things, and the world's probably a better place that you guys aren't bankers or lawyers or other kinds of criminals. But putting on your visionary hats, like looking out 5 to 10 years, what kinds of things do you guys want to be working on, or would you like to, do that are maybe different from what you've done today, or maybe an extension of your current roadmap?
So I have no idea where I'm going to be in 5 years from now. On a month-to-month basis, things can change drastically. For me, the biggest thing is I just want to make a difference. So whatever I'm doing, I want to make sure I leave the place a little better off than before I came.
So I have equal knowledge about the future, limited. But I think that the mobile space is really taking off, really poised for a lot of excitement and technology over the next couple of years. And I don't know what form that would take, but the opportunities to bring people together, as cheesy as our sort of connecting student bodies tagline reads, I'm really interested in connecting people, and I think Ankur touched on it with the sort of globalization that's going on. The technology that's going to come out is going to be able to bridge people in a way that's never been done before. So I think one of those, if not both of those, is something that I'd be really interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the sort of making a difference and having an impact thing. So whether it's with my own projects, this one, or future ones, or working with another organization doing exciting things, in 5 years I just want to keep doing work that actually matters to the world. That's most important to me.
Who are your heroes?
My parents.
I love Tesla. It's a long time ago, but the guy was just way ahead of his time. And if we had someone like that now, the world would be a way better place.
What do you mean by heroes?
Role models.
I didn't ask that question to necessarily respond off the bat, but everyone's looking at me, so I'll respond. Obviously parents, work ethic, in terms of work ethic, but the reason why I asked the question is because there's so many components to being a hero. Looking at my peers, for example, looking at what they do, in particular, like, one of my friends is an entrepreneur, and another one of my friends is an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden I'm going into this career path, and I'm always I'm sitting for hours listening to what one of my friends is doing, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And then ultimately, a year later, 2 years later, taking the advice and the insight and the inspiration that they offered and putting it to use.
People who aren't afraid to take chances, I'd say.
Yes, I guess I'll give a little bit of a different answer. I don't actually have any people who I would call my heroes. And I think that a lot of our mindset is sort of like, yeah, there are a lot of people who've done great work in the world that I respect greatly. But I think a lot of what drives young entrepreneurs is saying, that was great, but we can do it better. So there are a lot of people who I respect, but I wouldn't really categorize anybody as being the sort of shining hero of them all.
Interesting. Daniel?
Well, thank you for saying my answer. So, yeah. So we are all people. So there is no. I think there is no such a thing that ideal person, because we could call that person God. So it's I don't. I cannot name someone as a hero. I think you have to learn different things from different people, and you have to put this together, and you have to aim something which has been never done before. And
I thought you were going to say like Leonardo da Vinci. Yes, question.
I'm wondering if you ever had any doubts about your project, and how were you able to work through them or work around them?
So as the sort of, I guess, more technical engineer in our group, yes, all the time. The sales guy says don't say that to people, but we're being honest here. And the way that you deal with it is you figure out what is like driving that doubt, and you essentially, if you can convince yourself, you can convince anybody. You have to be really honest with yourself about the weaknesses of your project and really assess them all. So you got to say, okay, if I doubt this, anybody I talk to is going to doubt it. Let's do the research, let's do the development to make myself feel okay with it, and then I'll know what I need to sort of satisfy everybody else.
Well, through the times, I didn't have really doubts that we can do what we start. But thinking back, that I was stupid, because I should have had, because very often, well, I wouldn't say that it was just luck, but there was very tough times and very tough problems that we could fortunately solve. But when we started to do this business or company, we couldn't really realize the risk of this whole story. So yeah, but it's I think you should believe in what you are doing, because if you have too much doubts, then you're just simply not able to go forward.
I think in my experience, and I think anyone that has done a project before, there's always ups and downs, and there's times where you doubt, should I be doing this? Is this a waste of time? But above all, there's always the blind faith that what you're doing is going to work out. For me, the toughest part is when I'm pitching to investors or trying to get other people to buy into my vision, and when they don't get it right away, I'm like, why aren't they getting this? It just makes sense. And then I think, well, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe these other people are seeing the bigger picture, and those are the times when I really have the most doubt, when I see other people that I think should just get it right away and they don't.
So what's your best advice for pitching to investors?
You just really have to have confidence. You have to be able to go into a meeting and give a valuation and stand behind it. And if you believe that this is what your time is worth and this is what the project is worth, people will come around.
I do think it's a good thing to doubt yourself and to question, your organization and whether you're making an impact, because that's the only way that you'll actually grow and improve your model. So, like for us, we're focusing on education, and it's so difficult to measure that. How do you know you're, making, some student's life better? And I think, one way that our organization has sort of tackled that issue is we actually have the students, write us letters and talk about their lives and how school has changed them, what they're learning, etc. So I think in that way, we are sort of tackling this issue of, are we making an impact? But I think it is always good to, you have to have the blind faith, but it is good to question yourself at times, because you want, when times change, you have to change with it.
Yes. We're gonna close in a sentence, no more than a sentence. Best advice you ever got. You don't have to go first.
That I was going to answer that question.
Okay, go
but
ahead.
It sort of ties in
No,
anyway.
go ahead. You can answer.
So, as I said, I had a career opportunity after graduation, and someone said, like an entrepreneur said offhand in an email, just very briefly, one sentence, you should view that opportunity as failure of your company. And it was always a very strong motivator. In how it ties into doubt, there's sort of two kinds of doubt. One is intellectual and one is psychological. The psychological is whether or not you should keep going with your company. And the way that I see it, as long as your company has money and good people, hope springs eternal. And even if you don't have money, actually. And the intellectual doubt that has been said, you always have to be the harshest critic, but you also need to be able to figure out the answers to why you have those doubts and act on it, and have that long-term vision.
I think the best advice I ever got was from my mentor, and his big thing is you have to have clarity. If you're unhappy with a relationship with an employee or someone that you work with, be upfront, because otherwise it festers and turns into a much bigger issue. And if you deal with things right at the beginning, you can solve all sorts of problems down the road.
Good.
So the best advice that I've ever gotten was, I guess, not from somebody from the business world, it was from my high school wrestling coach, who said to us during a practice sometime, he said, wrestle the whole 6 minutes. So a wrestling match is 6 minutes long. And he said, no matter what you do, you can win, you can lose, but you better go out there and try the whole time and keep going until the end. And the end is when you can make the biggest difference. You can be losing a whole match and win in the last 3 seconds by pinning the guy. And that's what I think entrepreneurship is all about, wrestling the whole 6 minutes and getting through it, continuing working no matter how hard it is until that bell rings.
That's great.
A lot of these, this is like really great advice. I'm like taking notes mentally.
I'm taking notes.
I think, I'll be short and sweet. I think my mom has always said this to me, just be happy, because when you're happy, it goes back to that gut reaction and that gut instinct that what you're doing is, you may not necessarily know, but you're headed in the right direction, and you can, go forward and keep achieving what you want to achieve.
Well, I got a lot of advices, but it's hard to say that which is the best, but there's one which I always remember, that I was in a conference and I met with someone, and he said that, when you start a way, and then you always got a spark which starts you. And through your way, you should never lose that spark. You always have to remember for the spark, because the way can be hard. And if you lose this spark, you can burn out. And this spark is what you.
In a sentence.
Sorry.
It's supposed to be a sentence. No, we get. No, that's okay.
But
we get it. Yeah, don't let the spark burn out.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks, Josh. You're the closer. Make it good.
I sort of thought that anyway, hope springs eternal was what I was trying to get at before. Always keep pushing.
Ben, you're dying to talk again.
No, I was thinking we should talk.
Catherine, do you want to say a last word? No, that's okay.
I do. I think that one good quote sort of ties all of this. Maybe keep on keeping on. It's very short and sweet.
Keep on keeping on. Thank you, everybody. You guys are all great. Thank you.
I'd like to once again thank our speakers, our panelists, Catherine, Ben, Josh, Daniel, Jason. Thank you so much for being so forthcoming in your discussion with us. We really appreciate it. And Pattie, thank you so much for generating such a stimulating discussion. Same with you, our audience members. Thank you very much for helping to generate a stimulating discussion. We have a small token of thank you for all of you. It is a much coveted Churchill Club t-shirt.
All right.
You've definitely earned it tonight, so thank you. Thanks again to Intellius, thanks to the Kairos Society and to Microsoft, and thank all of you again for coming. Have a nice evening.